Now let's get started. We are honored to have lead these discussions licensed attorney and professional fiduciary Darby Jones, a member of the Florida and Maryland Bar. Darby serves on the executive council of the Real Property Probate Trust Law section of the Florida Bar and is a registered professional guardian. Darby is also the founder and executive director of the Professional Fiduciary Council of Florida. Darby, how can we better protect ourselves and our loved ones from fraud and exploitation?
Well, that is a big question, and we're going to try our very best to answer a lot of those questions and a lot more, and especially geared towards those caregivers out there or those people out there that might be considering hiring caregivers, or people who may be needing a caregiver themselves. So first of all, I'd like to say welcome to everybody and welcome back to our 2025 season. We've had a lot of fun so far. And remember, if you've missed any of our episodes, they're on YouTube at Aging Academy, or you can go to agingacademy.com and catch up on some of the previous episodes. So we're all aging together. We've never done it before. We're all going through this the very same way. And one of the challenges we have is just to learn how to do this. We all have a different life, different situation, live in different states. So our information today hopefully will help you have a more stress-free and safe and confident aging journey. I also want to take a second and thank the AARP again for allowing us to do this. We've had a lot of fun, Chandra and I, putting on these courses, and the feedback is just fantastic. And it's a great feeling to know that we're resonating with some real practical, applicable information. So today is your loved one being exploited? We've planned this episode in conjunction with World Abuse Awareness Day, as Michelle mentioned. And today we have with us a very special guest. And if you've been in any previous episodes, you will recognize her, Karen Murillo, which is with AARP Florida. And she's here to help us with covering this very substantive and important subject. So Karen, welcome.
Thank you.
The first thing we're going to cover is an overview of the current and future issues for caregivers. So again, if you're out there and you are currently a caregiver, or you might need a caregiver in the future, or you are thinking about hiring a caregiver for yourself, we're going to cover a lot of probably some questions that you have had. Next, we're going to talk about the professional assistance that's available to caregivers and who to talk to, where to get advice for hiring, for putting together an agreement, to preparing your home, your family for that inclusion of a caregiver service. And then finally, we're going to talk about what's certainly important, and one of the subjects of today is the fraud and prevention and neglect. So that Karen's going to provide a lot of great resources for all of us to utilize going forward. So next, I'm going to let Karen introduce herself and get this started.
Thanks, Darby. Hi, everyone. My name's Karen Murillo. I'm with AARP, and I am happy to be talking to you today about caregiving and fraud, exploitation, what we can do to prevent and flag these things early on. And I wanted to just let you know that there's two resources we're going to start right off the bat with here in the chat that we'll be referencing going through this presentation. The first is AARP's caregiver resource page. It's a really easy to remember website, aarp.org/caregiving. If you go to that resource center, there's everything that you could want to know about caregiving and more. And we'll talk about what some of those tools are and how they will hopefully help you if you are walking into the role of being a caregiver or considering it in the future. This will help you prepare for that. We also have an AARP Family Caregiver Guide, which is a publication that we're putting into the chat. It is available in English, Spanish, Chinese languages, and we have specialized versions of this available for military service members and veterans, as well as members of the LGBTQ community. So we've got lots of options, and we can tailor this to your unique caregiving journey. So Darby, if you want, I'm happy to jump off and kind of introduce the topic a little bit more.
Absolutely. Please do.
Thank you. So the reason that I'm here today talking on behalf of AARP and talking to you all about caregiving is because AARP knows that our 48 million plus family caregivers across the United States are providing billions of hours, hundreds of billions of dollars of unpaid labor every year for loved ones across the US. And we know that caregivers need common sense solutions and they need support for the challenges that they face each and every day. And so that is why AARP is committed to providing those resources and fighting for policies that help caregivers. And, when we talk about caregiving, we know that your heart is in it. It's something that can be overwhelming, but it is a labor of love and something that you want to do well. So that's why we make sure that you've got these resources. We're going to talk about more. If we don't include it in the chat, don't worry. We will provide them in follow-up materials and communications afterwards. But please do just take a look at some of these resources as we talk about them. Going through that guide, what you're going to see is that the suggestion is when you're approaching family caregiving, you want to think about this on, how do I assess this? What are the needs going to be? What is my role going to be? Which means that the best place to start as a family caregiver is to really ask your loved one, to have a conversation with your loved one. And it's a really important piece of this equation. Sometimes you can feel like you're making a lot of decisions and you're responsible for a lot of things on your own. So, including your loved one in the decision making process and conversation so that they feel empowered and a part of it is critical to helping both of you navigate this journey. And, it gives the person who's being taken care of, your loved one, a sense of control. Another thing that is really important to do is you're kind of assessing, okay, what are the responsibilities? What are the needs of my loved one? You really want to think about what resources are available, what professionals may be available to assist you. There are a number of topics that you may end up getting kind of pulled into across the caregiving journey. And it can range from assisting with or managing finances. It can fall into topics of legal needs like powers of attorney that you'll hear about, a lot of different legal issues. Physical activities of daily living and mobility considerations. That's another piece of the caregiving journey that you may be responsible for. Healthcare, mental, physical, emotional, long-term care, all of these things. Ensuring that your loved one has social connection and support systems in place. Caregiving also involves housing considerations, which we're going to talk about. Transportation is another piece of this puzzle. And then if you are dealing with anything from Medicaid, Medicare, veterans benefits, all of these things, you kind of have to learn how to navigate these multitude of different systems. And, technology is a piece of this, how to use it to protect and serve you and your loved one, as well as, considering what the end of life arrangements and considerations will look like. Those are all major themes of caregiving, especially for an aging loved one. And so you probably heard I hit a number of different professional areas just in that brief topic. So consider, who is in your corner to help you as an ally. You have your loved one's medical care providers who are there as allies. They can provide you with assessments and guidance on what are your loved one's specific medical needs, care needs, and help you through that journey. And there are other professionals like estate planning attorneys and financial planners who can assist you in making sure that your loved one's wishes are honored and their needs are met. So I'm going to pause here for a minute and turn back to Darby, because Darby, as an attorney who often advises people in caregiving roles, I know you've also provided estate planning and you've worked around long-term care needs. What are some of the most important things that come to mind for you as a practitioner when we're talking about being a caregiver?
Well, thank you. This is a super important subject, and it can get complex very easy. I want to go back and just mention a couple of things that came to my mind when you were giving your introduction. And living in Florida, we have a lot of what I call orphaned adults. I know people prefer to say solo agers, I believe is the more palatable description, but so I have, in my career as a professional fiduciary, I don't necessarily practice law any longer. I haven't for a very long time. But the mistake a lot of families make when they're thinking that a family member might need a caregiver or might not is they're calling from a long distance. Hey, mom, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing fine. Everything's fine. So what have you done today? Oh, I did this, that, and the other thing, and everything's fine. It's always fine. And the truth is, a lot of times it's not fine. And so if you're in the audience today and you're here because you may have some parents or loved ones that you think might need some caregiving, or if you possibly may need some caregiving in your future, please take this advice and be honest. None of us like to admit that we need help, especially women. You women out there are very reluctant to accept help. And that's because we've just always kind of been that caregiver person ourselves and nurturer naturally. So it's very uncomfortable for us to accept help. But please, when you're calling your loved one at a distance, don't just believe what they're saying. Also, the other situation that I see often is the holidays. People will come and visit once a year sometimes, and that's all they ever really see. And everything throughout the year, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then when they arrive, it is absolutely a disaster and it becomes a crisis. And the estate planning attorneys, people like myself, get this call like, oh my God, my mother is living in this horrible situation. What do I do? And so today, hopefully, we're going to help you guys not have to deal in a crisis situation. If you have a person at a distance, or even if not at a distance, it's just you don't feel comfortable being nosy, or they don't particularly want you coming around looking in their life, you can hire professionals around you to help. And one of those that I use very often is a certified care manager. Let's say you're living in Chicago, your mother's living in Miami, everything's fine. You kind of just want to make sure, and you can hire a certified care manager to go and just visit with your mother. And they've done this enough times to know not to show up with a clipboard and a name tag to scare your mother. So you can talk in advance about your mother's personality or your father, whoever it is, to make sure that that visit is productive and get you the information that you might really need to know whether your mother or loved one needs care or not. So before we even get into the how-tos, don't assume that everything's okay with your loved one. The other thing I want to also go into now is the can you be the caregiver, or do you want to be the caregiver for your loved one? Speaking for myself, I have 2 sons. I don't want my sons, giving me a shower, okay, or helping me get dressed. I want to prepare them and myself that I have someone independent and professional taking care of me if that need ever arises. And I have had that conversation with them and who to call to make sure that this gets put in place. Someone who's trustworthy, someone who's licensed, someone who's had a drug test, a background check, etc., and how to legitimately hire a caregiver. And we'll go into more detail about that in a little bit. But have those conversations now and be thinking about it now. I know I look 12 years old, but I'm not. I'm a lot older than you think. And maybe being in this industry, I'm probably a little more proactive than most. But if I can leave you with one tidbit, it's don't not think about this. Think about your own care. And hopefully some of these tips today you'll be able to utilize for anyone that you might be caring for now. So does your family really allow for you to be a caregiver? Do you live far away? Some of the examples I just used. You may be the likely person, the daughter or the child, but how can you actually fill that role as a caregiver if you're not living there? And if not, how do you facilitate the care that your loved one needs? So whether you can be the caregiver or not has a lot to do with geographics. You may live in the same state, but still not close enough or nearby enough to make it practical for you. Does the house have the space? Are you going to bring the loved one into your home, or are you going to move into the loved one's home? And how does that work? All kinds of legal red flags there as far as the titling of the home, whatever, liability insurance you're going to need to put in place, the safeguarding of valuables, the inventory of valuables. If you have a grand piano in the living room and one of you dies, whose piano is it? Who gets the piano? So there are a lot of little nuances to joining households. So as Karen pointed out, speaking to a legal professional, an estate planning attorney is a great idea before you start joining households, as far as you becoming someone's caregiver or you having a family member come in and be your caregiver. Professional relationships a little different, and we're going to get there. But right now, I'm just talking about you being a caregiver or not for your family or loved one. And another issue would be the finances. Does it make sense? Can your family afford for you to give up your income or your career to then become the caregiver for your loved one, or vice versa? And there are some tools. Some long-term care insurance does compensate family members for the care of their loved one, but you have to make sure you read that policy thoroughly. Again, professional advice for that. Don't read it and think you understand it, because they are all very different and all have very kind of challenging provisions to understand, and when they actually kick in. Okay, let's say Karen and I are sisters, and I've decided I'm going to move in with mom and take care of her because she's at that time. At least I think she's at that time, because now I get to live kind of for free, right? Well, Karen might think that's not quite fair. How come Darby gets to go live with mom and now she doesn't have any expenses and she gets to use mom's house and who knows what else, her checkbook maybe, and is she paying herself? How are things going financially with that family caregiver? So you, again, want to make sure you make that very clear to all the siblings or anyone that has a vested interest in the financial situation that might be going on. And we'll talk about it when it's a professional caregiver as well. A big issue there.
Darby, if I can just interject, I think that it's really important to clarify what Darby's describing here as being a full-time caregiver, whether that's in like a unpaid, family professional or not professional, but an unpaid position as a family caregiver, or whether that's, hiring a professional that we're going to talk about. But being a caregiver may also be, that person who's far removed and not living there with mom or dad, who has a role to play in this. So caregiving has a lot of different shapes, sizes. It looks a lot of different ways, and it kind of goes across a spectrum. And I love the sibling discussion and, work living with mom for quote unquote free, because we're definitely going to talk about how finances play a role in this. But for the unpaid caregiver, this can be a full-time job in and of itself, whether you've got a full-time job on top of it or not. Being a caregiver really is all consuming. So these are great points that you're bringing up.
And to that point as well, don't make sure you have plan B, okay? Because you may think you make the great caregiver and your mom have a great relationship, but it could go sideways fast. So make sure that this isn't your only plan, that, you kind of go into it with a temporary point of view that it may not work out. And you have to be honest again about that. We mentioned it very briefly, or Karen mentioned it briefly, that one of the most important things to have in place is a power of attorney. Your loved one needs to have a power of attorney in place, naming you or someone as the agent under that power of attorney. And that way the finances can be focused in a clear path. that one person is in charge of those finances. It may not be Darby as a caregiver. Karen might be the power of attorney and in charge of the funds.